Okay, I'm going to just do a quick demonstration of how to use paint. This is watercolor paint here. And when you're painting with watercolor, of course, you want to have paint and you want to have a brush, but then you also want to have some water. And you might want to have two waters because one of the waters will start to get all the color in it, and then you try to keep the other one clear so you can kind of refresh your brush. But you also want to have a towel that you can use for the same thing. So on the left, these are Crayola markers, and on the Crayola paints, and on the right, these are Jack Richardson paints. These are a little stronger as far as the color, and they also dry a little sticky. They're much more rich. I like them. They're both good though, and it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do. So I'm gonna kind of move these aside, and then I'm just gonna start really quickly showing you some simple things you can do. So with watercolor paint, there is white watercolor paint, but most of the basic sets don't have it. And so if you're painting on white paper, how do you get white? You just leave the paper and the whiteness of the paper. So I'm gonna take a little yellow, and I'm gonna kind of make a sun right here. But instead of making the sun yellow, I'm gonna make it white. And the yellow is gonna be around it, kind of showing the brightness of the sun. See, the brightest spot there is white, and then it radiates out kind of yellowish. And then I'm gonna just put a little bit of orange at the edge and around. Now see how it's a little wet? If you have too much water and it starts to drip, just take your brush and put it on the towel and dry it off. If you want the color to be richer and darker, you use less water. If you want it to be lighter and more delicate, then you use more water. But you have to be careful with the water, because the more water you put on there, things start to drip and get a little out of hand. So I wanted to kind of have a blend of the orange and the yellow, and then I'm gonna blend into some red. And this is just a simple way to do suns. It's kind of like a sunset sky. I'm gonna pull some of the orange into the yellow. I need a tiny bit more water, but not too much. If I put too much, it's gonna get real out of control and drippy. So I'll just stop there, and I'm gonna start bleeding into the red. And you can spend as much time making it a little more, putting it how you want it. I'm just doing this very quickly just to show you the technique. So the white of the paper makes that bright sun, and then the yellow around it is like the yellow light radiating out. Okay, so I'm blending some of the red with the orange, and if you want a darker, richer red, of course, you need more paint, less water. So I'm gonna put more paint on the brush, and there you see it, that thicker, darker red. I kind of like it a little bit kind of washed out. I think it looks nice. So I'm gonna leave it that way, sort of. Okay, and then you could go from this red, you can go into a violet and then to a blue, and it looks cool, okay? All right, what else do we want to do? Let's make another version of the sun in the sky, but this time we'll make the sky blue. So I'm gonna put a little yellow, but I'm gonna leave the white in the middle. Okay, and now I don't want this yellow to radiate out too much, but I do want it a little bit. If you mix yellow and blue, you get green. So if you want your sun to be green, then mix the yellow with the blue, but most likely you don't want your sun to be green. So I'm just making it like that bright white. I'm just leaving it like that with some yellow around it. So maybe the yellow is part of the sun, or maybe it's just like the heat outside of it that you see in the day. But then we need to get to blue. So a simple way to get to blue And where you don't want it to be green is just put a little bit of this red. Just a tiny bit around your sun. You don't want it to be too thick and dark like that, so we're going to wash it out a little bit with water. With just a little bit of that redness. And then it could be a little bit of orange when you mix the red with the yellow. But I want my sky to be blue, so I'm really not going to... It's too much, actually. What I have already done is more than I wanted, but it'll still work. Okay, so then I'm going to put a little bit of the violet color at the edge of the red. Just a little. And all I'm doing is I'm creating a buffer around the yellow for my blue sky to come in. Okay, so that looks cool. You might want to leave it like that, but if you just want to have like a yellow sun and then a blue sky, then you can start putting your blue sky up here. Okay, now what if you want clouds in your sky? Well, the white of the paper can be your clouds, or you can just have a lighter tone of blue. I'm using the two different blues, so they're slightly different colors. So you can kind of like use one blue and see how that just creates a little bit of an impression of a cloud in the sky. But what I'm really trying to show you is, okay, then this blue is going to come around to the purple. And you can actually go right over the purple with more blue if you want to really just make it look like it's just yellow sun and blue. Now, I kind of like a little hints of the other colors, but my main thing is I don't want my blue to mix with the yellow because I don't want green in my sky. I don't want a green sun. You see that? I liked how what that color is, but I'm just trying to show you. Okay, now I've avoided getting too far near the sun, and you could spend more time like blending in there and kind of playing with it, but the closer you get to the yellow, the more chance you're going to have of making your yellow mix with the blue and then turn green. So I'll just put a little more blue up here. Calm down, recording device. Shaking my camera. All right, so I've already got plenty of paint to make like a pastel blue sky up here. Dude, stop doing that. Like that shaking. Stay put, camera. Chill out there, buddy. Okay, so that's watercolor. Now the cool thing about watercolor is it mixes with water. Kind of obvious in the name. Watercolor. And so when your watercolor paint dries, you come back to the next day and you put water on it, it'll bleed. So that's good, and it's something you need to be careful with. If you want to change something, you can, but you also can over water the painting, and that looks weird. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that because I want to transition to a different type of paint. And this is tempera and acrylic. So I'm going to get rid of these. Keep my water, I'm going to put it up here. Now we're going to start on cardboard. So let's just take, I'm going to use something called gesso, which is what's on canvases if you buy them in the store. This is acrylic gesso, and it's designed to cover the surface of something you're going to paint on if you want it to have a white background. And that's what you want a lot of the time. And so when you're putting the gesso on, you want a larger brush so it spreads, and you want to put it on kind of evenly. So this brush I'm using is actually like smaller than I could use, but I just want to show you So you're gonna cover the whole thing with the white. And you go back and forth, and then you let it dry, and then you can do another layer. So if you don't want a brown background, if you really want a white, solid white background, then you need to do layers of it, and then you need to wait till it dries. But I'm actually gonna show you, I'm gonna put a little more on here, but I'm gonna actually show you something kind of fun that you can do. You can do this with white paint, but you can do it with gesso too. So if the white is still wet, then instead of putting, you know, a thick white layer, I'm gonna mix my white with some blue. And so I'm gonna use the white that's there. That's pretty chunky blue. This paint's getting a little dry. But I'm just gonna mix that blue and white and make like a light blue sky. And then I'm gonna make it darker higher up. Okay, I'm not gonna do a whole painting, I'm just showing you techniques. And I'm also warning you about some stuff. So gesso and acrylic paint, when they dry, they harden to a plastic. You know, like acrylic nails. That's what this paint turns into, is hardened plastic. So when you're painting with acrylic paint, you really need to pause quite often and clean. So I've got a bunch of paint on this. I'm just gonna like try to get as much of it off onto this cardboard as I can, because I don't like wasting paint. So, but the other thing about acrylic is once it dries completely, then when you do the next layer, it won't blend, which is good if you want to, you know, put something on top of the paint and you don't want it to get all mushy. Like with watercolor, when you put a new color on top, it's gonna get real mushy. So I'm gonna really try to get all this gesso and all this blue acrylic paint off of the brush, and you see how much it changes the color of my water. Okay, so then what I need to do is I've still got chunks of gesso on this thing. So I'm gonna come to my towel and I'm just gonna wipe that extra paint off on the towel, because otherwise I'll spend all day and I'll still have paint in the brush. Okay, so there's a little bit still in there, so I'm gonna put it in here. But then I'm gonna go to my clear water and make sure there's no more of that white and blue in there. Okay, now I've got a clean brush. Now I'm gonna tell you why this is important. If I don't do this, that acrylic paint is gonna dry onto my brush and it's gonna ruin the brush. So here's a brush with dried acrylic paint on it. It's like crunchy and thick and it's broken. It's unusable. It's like hard as a rock. Now there's solvent I can use to kind of repair it that works pretty well, but it's time consuming and it'll still have blue stains, and sometimes it doesn't, it's unable, I can't get all that out. So it's very important that you wash these brushes when you're using acrylic, and you wash it right away. So I'm gonna show you what I would prefer you do. So I'm gonna just show you how to set up when you're painting and how to clean up. So you come over here, there's a bunch of watercolor paint, there's a bunch of brushes, and there's some cups. So you wanna, when you're starting out, you wanna come over here, you wanna have a nice clean cup. So what that means is, after you're done painting, you need to clean it as thoroughly as you can for the next person, because otherwise they have to do this and it takes more time. So there's some stains in there, but for the most part, this is clear water. Okay, so you want to get your water, and then I encourage you to get a second one. A lot of you guys like to work together, but I think it's better if you both have your own water, your own brushes, and your own paint. because then you can be more careful with it. Okay, so you pick your brushes. You don't have to have a bunch. You can just start with one or two, but eventually you'll find the brushes that you like. So let's just say I'm grabbing these three. Okay, so I've got brushes, I've got water. I need to come over here. This is where the clean towels are. They look dirty because they're stained, because they've had paint on them, but they've been washed with, you know, in the washing machine. So those are clean. If they're in the bag, they're clean. After you use it, leave it on the other side. That's where the dirty ones go. The dirty ones can still be used, but if you want a fresh, clean towel, that's where you get them. Okay, so then you bring it over, and then you got to pick which paint you're going to use. Okay, so if you're using watercolor, you're generally going to be using like white paper, watercolor paper. If you're using acrylic, you're going to be using cardboard at first, and then eventually we're going to use canvases. So the acrylic paints, I have a set like this, which has lots of different colors. You don't want to use a lot of this. You just want to take a tiny little bit. And where are you going to put it? Well, over here, I have stacks of cardboard. You're going to pick one piece of cardboard, preferably a small piece. And these are really good because you can spread it out. And this is going to be your palette where you're going to put the paint. And then you have to pick another piece, and that's where you're going to put your painting. So on the palette, you're going to pick the colors that you want. And I'm just going to keep it simple for now and say I want green. Take the cap off, and you don't need any more than that. You really don't. If you put too much on there, it's going to dry and harden, and it just wastes the paint. So say I want some green, and let's just say I want some light blue. Just a little bit, okay? Just a little bit, okay? Now, I'm gonna walk back over here. And